Alright everybody, welcome to Confidential Cinema, and today we are doing the very first episode of a ranked edition of a series that we're going to be doing, and obviously since Infinity War is coming out, we are starting with an MCU rank. There's 20 movies, it's the easiest way to go about it. We have 7 people within our crew of Confidential Cinema, so we all ranked our personal favorites from 1 through 20. We had a number system, went about it, and that's how we got our numbers. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the MCU. At number 20, no surprise here, bottom of the list for most people, it's Thor the Dark World. Is there any surprises for you with that?
It's my second to last personally. I still find like Thor an entertaining character compared to what I have as my last choice, which I'm sure we'll see soon, or hopefully see soon. But yeah, it's the difference between Thor the Dark World and Ragnarok just shows everywhere they went wrong with Dark World and misusing this character that is such a good, comic foil.
Yeah,
and take it so serious.
Yeah, I personally believe that there's honestly nothing wrong with Thor the Dark World. I just think it's very forgettable and unmemorable, and it's just who cares. So at number 19, another one that arguably is one of the lower ranked one, whether you think it's bad or not, and it's clearly it's unforgettable because they recast the character that is the Incredible Hulk at 19.
Yeah, this is the one that they seem like they hate the most because they pretty much canceled it out of canon. I know it's still kind of considered, but they try not to remark upon this about this movie at all, and it kind of killed the chances for the Hulk to have a franchise. It's the only Marvel property without a sequel or a sequel in sight at least.
And it's you have what Hurt's character, William Hurt, right?
Yes, William Hurt.
You have William Hurt's character of General Ross, and then they completely are just like Betty Ross. Nah, don't worry about it. Liv Tyler, you don't need a job. So they're like, you live and die with Edward Norton. All right, number 18. This one is arguably the one that everyone actually says is bad, whereas the two before it, people are like, they're unforgettable, they're not great, or whatever. But this one is the one that most people actually say is bad, and that's Iron Man 2, which is a lot of people love the very first Iron Man, then the second one came out. So honestly, it might just be a letdown more than anything. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think that people's opinions on this was based on when they originally saw it, and that didn't live up to what they were hoping for, because I rewatched it recently, and I find it fairly enjoyable. And as enjoyable as the rest of the Iron Man franchise. You still have Robert Downey Jr. doing his thing. You get Sam Rockwell, who I wish we could have more in the Marvel Universe, just for his energy. I think fits with it perfectly.
Yeah, and also you have Mickey Rourke's character, hot off the wrestler, and I feel like they misused him, but overall the things he had to do, that scene on the racetrack was entertaining and very suspenseful. So it had elements to it that showed that the MCU as a whole is strong, even though if it has weaker movies as a whole, it's a very strong franchise. And that brings us to number 17, which honestly, there's only one thing about this movie personally that bothers me, and it's the bleached eyebrows, and it's the very first Thor movie. The look of Thor just kind of really throws me off and takes me out of it, but the Thor character for me personally I really enjoy, and I like his relationship with Natalie Portman. A lot of people say that there's no chemistry there, but that's always the debatable. And what about you with the first Thor?
I mean, I love Natalie Portman always. I think there is some chemistry, and I didn't think she seemed like she didn't want to be in it, as people say. I think the main casting problem is Kat Dennings, who I think they just assumed was funnier than she was, and she now seems like she's not much part of the universe either, which might be a smart decision. But it is a good fish out of water story, in an origin, but it just doesn't elevate to the fun and exciting qualities that the rest of the movies can.
But to the to give it a lot of credit, without it we wouldn't have Loki. So definitely the Thor and the Thor character itself. So Thor and Loki.
Thor's been done better. Loki's been done better. It's just these characters have.
So you got to start somewhere, and with a character who's a mythological, goofy character, I feel like they started and they gradually got better. All right, so that rounds out the bottom 4. Next one is the newest MCU movie, and that is AntMan The Wasp. I'm not sure if this is one where it just hasn't sunk in enough, if it's unforgettable. We actually had one two people that didn't rank it, so I kind of had to do a little cheat and do the average twice and kind of make up for the people's numbers, so it could either be higher or even lower if all 7 of us had seen it. So at 16, I think Ant-Man the Wasp is a solid spot. It's higher for me personally because I really enjoy it. There's no stakes, but it's a fun ride, and Paul Rudd and Evangeline Lilly do really well together, and Michael Douglas is always a good thing. So what did you think about Ant-Man the Wasp?
I'm surprised that it's this low. I mean, this is about where I had it. But I thought there might have been more of a recency bias that people, were hot off it because it seemed like people were excited about it. But Ant-Man, for me in general, is a franchise that I think is held down by the director. That I'm blanking on his name right now. Payne Reed, yes, who I think his genre stylings of comedy is just kind of too present and doesn't quite meld as well as some of the other funnier Marvel movies. And I think this is Ant-Man the Wasp is a good example. But Evangeline Lilly is great, and I would be excited.
The action is really good in this movie, and the chemistry, the characters are really good. But yeah, I do agree that the joke, the laughter, and the jokes, and just the overall, light tone really affects the movie, especially right off of Infinity War. The contrast is just very big. So I think maybe in time,
as important.
Yeah, so I think in time it probably could go up for most people, but it definitely is. I'm understanding right now at 16. So at 15, this one's the biggest surprise for me. Not because I think the movie deserves to be higher, or at least I expect more people to think it's higher. It's just compared to the ones that are above it. I think that just on average, I would expect this one to be at least a couple more, and that's the second Avengers Age of Ultron. I know it wouldn't be high up there for most people, but given the movies we haven't said yet, I definitely expect it to be above a couple of more. So that kind of surprised me. Plus, there are very great moments in Age of Ultron, and I honestly think that a lot of people haven't revisited it, and they just compare it to the first Avengers, and they just think it doesn't have that spark. What about you?
I really don't like Age of Ultron. I found it really boring, and didn't find any way to move forward these characters in a new or enlightening way, which I feel like Infinity War was able to do. It was kind of just treading ground of Avengers and adding 2 new characters, like Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, who are 2 of the most uninteresting, boring ones, which Scarlet Witch could be. Quicksilver just died on landing, and that's why they pretty much never used him again.
Yeah, and obviously at this point, if you haven't noticed, it's MCU rank, so there might be spoilers when we do a little description of the movie. So a little heads up right there.
Metaphorically died anyways.
Yeah. So going into the fourth one, this is one of those movies where you hear a lot of people say that this movie is okay for the franchise, but it's great from the director, and that's Iron Man 3. A lot of people say it's a great Shane Black movie, but not necessarily a good Iron Man movie. And personally, I think it's about in the middle of the road for both of them for me. Like, if I really, am in the mood, it's a nice one for me. But if I'm not in the mood for this specific type of movie, then it definitely takes me out of it. And, it's nice to see Guy Pearce, him going at it. And you have everybody with the comics, with the Mandarin. They're just like, oh, it's not like the comics. It's not faithful, blah, 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 blah. So give or take how you want it with that. But Iron Man 3 overall, I feel is serviceable. And Tony Stark is Tony Stark. Robert Downey Jr. kills it as always. So overall, I think it's okay. So what do you think?
I really enjoy Iron Man 3. I feel like I probably have it a little higher. I always thought it was higher than most. So I'm actually impressed that it was this high. I love the twists it takes. I find it hilarious, and the Shane Black stuff just works for me. And I think maybe it's because I'm not as attached to mythology or canon of any kind of universe as much as other people, that just because it kind of isn't true to that doesn't hurt me. I see that because it's a good Shane Black movie, that makes it a good movie to me.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think this has an interesting... I think he does the most emotionally with Tony Stark that any of the movies have, too, and took him on a new, interesting road.
It's a Tony Stark movie more than it is an Iron Man movie,
yes.
So that's definitely that. And then going up to number 13, it's kind of a surprise that it's this low, given how most people like the movie, but for me personally, I like the first one better, and that is the very first Ant-Man at number 13. Like we were talking about with the humor, a lot of people think of it's a nice little heist movie. It's one of those genre. It's a comedy heist movie, and they don't really think of it as a superhero movie. I think it has good elements to it, but overall, it's very forgettable for me personally. So it's not as high for me, and I think I might have dragged it down a little bit. What are your thoughts on the first Ant-Man?
Yeah, I think some people are too high on this, just because it is a forgettable movie, and it just doesn't jump to levels of what an action movie or a superhero movie can. And I think that's because they put it in a person who did Jim Carrey movies as a director. And it's really hard. I think there's a bias to my lack of enjoyment in this movie, because it's hard for me to watch without thinking what it could be like if Edgar Wright was given the reins. And I just miss. That's the movie I think I missed the most. That never happened.
Yeah, definitely. Honestly, I personally think that that's what drags it down for me, is because it's has a smidge of an Edgar Wright flair to it because he originally wrote the script and started it off, and I think that was Peyton Reed trying to be Edgar Wright, whereas the second one, Peyton Reed was being Peyton Reed, so overall I think the action was better because he started from scratch, so that's why I personally like the second one better, so I can understand, where it's at. They're really close together, and that's pretty understandable. At number 12, we have the last origin movie, the last actual full origin movie, and that's Doctor Strange, number 12. Benedict Cumberbatch did a really good job, and this was a lot of fun. Yeah, I don't think it holds up already, even it's just almost 2 years out. But I think that the visuals that do look good look really good, and Benedict Cumberbatch does a really good job. Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One, and Wong and Chiwetel Ejiofor, they do a really good job. So I have a lot of fun with this movie, but overall it's similar on the Ant-Man reign, where it's overall forgettable and it doesn't really hold stakes to the entire franchise. So it's one of those throwaway movies, but it's a good time. What about you?
I have this a lot lower than most people. I think around 17 or 16.
Wow.
And I don't know if I wasn't getting anything new from Doctor Strange that we didn't get Tony Stark's personality. I think through Infinity War they were able to find, I think, a little more separation.
Yeah. Comparing them closer up it helped a lot.
Yeah. I feel like they couldn't really find what they wanted with this character throughout this, and I think I was so hyped on the visuals that I was kind of a letdown by the time I got it, because it looked. I understand it's a very tough task to create this, this dimensional changes and stuff and make them look real, but it always looks somewhat artificial to me.
Yeah, I will say that the scene where he goes through time and space and she does all that, the astrophysics stuff, that all looks really good. So that holds up. But there's times where when you get the buildings moving around, and they're climbing on the buildings sideways and all that stuff. Already that doesn't hold up for me. So at number 11, just outside the top 10, which really breaks my heart and really hurts me, that is the very first Captain America, the first Avenger. A lot of people think that this one is just a throwaway movie. It's terrible. It doesn't do the Captain America character justice, but I think that Chris Evans, right out the gate, was Captain America. Steve Rogers, I think he did a great job. I think the relationship they built up with him and Bucky, James Buchanan, right away just elevated what we got in later movies, and I think that was a great start. I definitely think that the movie as a whole could have been better, but what we got, I had a really good time with it, and I really enjoyed it. What about you?
I recently rewatched it, and I liked it a lot better than I did the first time. I think because now I know what to expect from a Marvel movie, what the universe is going for. When at the time that came out, I still was not fully sold. Because I didn't like Iron Man 2 when it first came out. I wasn't crazy about Thor, but it was really not to like the middle of Phase 2 where I started to fully get on board. So now watching in retrospect, I can have a new appreciation for where these characters came from. I don't love the effects of small Chris Evans at all, a miniature version of him. Just because it's like I already have him engraved in my mind. I wonder if that might have worked better with a new discovered actor. Yeah. Someone who I already had an idea of what his body was like.
Fair enough. All right, going into the top 10. This one hurts me because I love the first one and I don't like this one. The only reason that this movie is watchable for me is because the characters are just so great, the acting is great, but the story is. For me personally, it's terrible. I don't enjoy it. I think it's stupid and silly. And if it wasn't for the laughs that I get from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I would not enjoy this at all. And that's what we have at number 10. I know for you, it's a little bit higher. So what do you think?
It's very high for me. I'm amazed that it's this high. I'm really happy it's this high on the list because I know I'm very far on the outside. I don't remember if I had this or 2 or 3 because I go back and forth. Spoilers. I go back and forth with Guardians of the Galaxy 1 on which one I like better because I'm not sure. I rewatched Guardians of the Galaxy 1 recently. I might actually like 2 better. I think they got to explore the weirdness and the eccentricities of these characters in this world more, and I love Ego as a villain. He's one of my favorite villains. I just love how bizarre that they're embracing the weirdness of this universe, I feel like, for the first time. That I find lots of fun, and my favorite scene in any of the MCU movies is Groot trying to break them out of their cell on the Ravager ship.
Yeah,
it's the funniest.
Yeah, there are some funny moments. Like I said, the comedy is there, the characters are there, and even the emotions there because of the characters. As far as the story, I don't buy it. I kind of hate it, and yeah, it just brings it down for me. But I will say it is overall a watchable movie. So compares to that.
I bought the story and the father-son dynamics.
Yeah, just one where it's, I don't know, it just, just like it's one of those stories where it's like, of course, the bad guy or somebody has to tell him exactly why just to get the plot moving, and that just bothered me. I feel like they could have done it in a more natural state, but then again, maybe Ego's a planet, so he's just naive and stupid, so you never know. All right,
I feel like high voting really weighted this one up a little higher than it would have been.
I think that helped a couple. At number 9, we have my favorite superhero of all time, his only standalone movie in this franchise. We have Spider-Man Homecoming. Honestly, personally, I think that there's only like 1 or 2 moments in this entire movie that actually affect it as on the grand scale, but overall I love this movie. I love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. When we saw him in Civil War, I just knew that he was going to be really good, but it could have been a one-hit wonder, or that could have been just the Russo brothers. So when we got it on here, got a brand new director, and I was kind of nervous, but he knocked it out the park. I love Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I can't wait to see what's going to happen in Far From Home and go from there. What about you on Spider-Man Homecoming?
Yeah, I think 10 years down the line, this is going to be higher in the list than it is now, too. I think it's still just not enough separation in time between other Spider-Mans. There's still a lot of people that like Spider-Man 1 or 2 better, and that might taint them putting this as high. And I think this is probably the best version of Spider-Man that we would have gotten, and it's the best depiction of the teenage version of Peter Parker.
Yeah, good combination of jokes, action, quips, all that stuff. It's all there.
And once again, one of our better villains without needing, I feel like this is what Ant-Man could have done. They didn't raise the stakes higher than they needed to be, but still were able to find some kind of depth there and really heavy emotional stakes, at least between the Vulture and Spider-Man.
Yeah, tying that story with the Homecoming date, that really helped a lot. And then at the end of the day, his tie to the girl really didn't matter, but that's the reason that him and the Vulture had the little moments. And Michael Keaton as the Vulture was just really good, and the way that they set it up at the very beginning, how the aftermath of the Avengers really gave some weight to that character.
Yeah, I think it proves that you don't need the most intimidating of villains to be a good villain.
Yeah, you just got to be good actor, good performance, and bring it. All right, at number 8, this is going to be the biggest surprise for everybody. We have the very first Avengers. Number 8, I didn't even want to build that up. This is one of those movies for me personally. I think there's just something missing. I don't have that magic. I don't have that nostalgia. I don't have any, I really enjoy the movie. I love it. It's, one of my favorite superhero movies, but as far as one of the best superhero movies, I just think it gives, it's given a little too much credit. I have a lot of fun with it. I feel like overall the story is, flat. It's obviously the grand scheme, there's stakes to it, but as far as you ultimately know what's going to happen, so it doesn't really have that stakes. And I think that was them just bringing the team together, which is important. It's a lot of fun. All the characters interact great together. You have Iron Man and Banner. You have Iron Man and Cap. You have all that stuff. It does a really good job. It's the first time we have the new Incredible Hulk, and they pull that off. I'm always angry. That's the key. That scene. All that stuff's nice. When they assemble, you have that score. So there's a lot of great elements to it, which I think bring it up for most people. For me as a whole, it's just a little bit down. What about you on the first Avengers?
Yeah, I think this is the most overrated of the MCU movies, with a lot of people putting this in the top 3. Usually on their list. I do, the action is well done. The way they're able to use all the characters really set the place where they're able to do future movies in Civil War and in Infinity War, doing these big action scenes with all these heroes. And Loki's wonderfully used. However, I find the dramatic moments of trying to get the team to bicker and fight so forced and so kind of out of nowhere. The lines they say are kind of dumb, and I think Joss Whedon, in retrospect, might not be the best person to do this. I feel like his writing of kind of more fun sci-fi things like Buffy and Firefly just didn't quite meld with what the Avengers should have been, which is more fun than these fighting moments.
Yeah, exactly. This is supposed to be more mature, and the weight, the balance wasn't quite there.
I never buy it. I never buy why they're upset at each other.
Definitely. Like you said, when you said Force, I was like, nail on the head. Definitely felt Force. All right, at number 7, this is a movie for me that overall I really enjoy it. I think the characters are good. I think the action is good. I love the villain, but I think that the visuals are weak, and I think it has that cliche, mirror image of the villain, even though they put a twist on it, so it makes a little more sense, but at the end of the day, it's still the same concept, and that's 2018's Black Panther. ultimately, I think it also brings it down for me is Black Panther's not even like top 5 most interesting character in his own movie, and I really think that brings it down. And I think the comparison of Civil War Black Panther and Black Panther, they're just almost two completely different characters for being the same character. And I really think that you see that in different writers, different directors, and I really think that the tone is off. And it's not like I think the Black Panther character is bad, but when you compare it, when you're in a franchise, I feel like it's not the same, and it kind of affects it for me. What about you on Black Panther?
I actually really like the development of Black Panther character and Chadwick Boseman's performance. It just purposefully more stoic, so it's not going to capture the screen as much as Michael B. Jordan's more electric, tempered character. But I feel like Black Panther is the best world building of any of the Marvel movies as far as creating Wakanda in this environment. You really understand how this society impacts Black Panther as a hero and his world and story on its own. So Black Panther, another one I feel like this is about where I had it, but I think it will be higher in years for everyone.
Yeah, it's one of those where I'm pretty much the same exact way, but it could be the exact opposite. Given time, it's either going to shoot up 3 or 4 for everybody, or shoot down 3 or 4, because either the flaws are going to really stand out with time now that the freshness is gone, or they're really going to understand that those actually aren't flaws. So it's just one of the exact mirror opposites. Yeah. I really think it's going to go one or the other for most people.
Just compared to some of the movies at the end of our list, like the Thor movies and Incredible Hulk, when we talked about how unmemorable these characters are and why they haven't really been brought back into the universe, this is opposite. This creates so many characters that people love, like Shuri and
Killmonger.
Lupita Nyong'o's character. I would love to just get like a Bond's spin-off movie.
Yeah, I definitely believe that the characters and the memorability of this movie is honestly what keeps it for me. All right, at number 6, this is another one that breaks my heart that it's so low, but I understand, people aren't as necessarily a fan of the villain, and they think that the twist of the plot, everything that happened is kind of like weak and lame, but honestly, it works for me. I love it. Everyone's like, oh, you just have the airport fight, in Civil War, and then that's what's so great about it. But for me personally, I think the movie overall is great. I think there's just the unfortunate funeral scene of Peggy Carter. I think that affects the pacing, as the second act starts, or right in the middle of the second act, whenever that is, and I think that affects the pacing. But as a whole, overall, it's very epic. That you have the airport scene at the end, and then you also have the 3-way battle with Bucky, Iron Man, and Tony Stark. And Captain America. So I really think all of that is great. It's not just a one-hit wonder with the airport scene, even though that is a 20-minute action scene that is amazing. You still have the end, and then you also have the beginning fight, and you also have the epicness of why you're bringing it all together. I really thought that was an interesting point. You have Crossbones and all that stuff. So all the stuff that tied it in. At the end of the day, it is still a Captain America movie, and I thought that was very impressive. So I love this movie a lot, and the only thing that brings it down for me a little bit is just, like I said, the pacing issue. So what about you on Civil War?
So yes, watching Civil War a second time was probably very important. For some reason, the first time, maybe it was the high expectations. It just didn't hit for me as high. But the second time, I was able to enjoy the action scenes more. The airport sequence I like, just not as much as other people. But what is my favorite sequence, my favorite action sequence, I think, maybe a scene in Winter Soldier I have higher. But one of my favorite action sequences is just the end of Iron Man and the Winter Soldier and Captain America kind of fighting off and taking tons of punches. It's just a great visual scene, and you really feel the emotional.
They pulled the camera out, so you saw all 3. You saw everything in frame, and it's just beautiful.
But there's so much emotional impact there too. Of you understand why they're fighting and what this fight means. And Baron Zemo is the most underrated villain.
Yeah, exactly.
I really just wasn't in it a lot, and he never fought or anything, but he was pulling all the strings. And with the exception of as of now, Thanos, with the exception of that, spoilers, he is the only successful one. He completed his goal.
Yeah.
Which does not happen. He wasn't trying to murder people, he was just trying to break them apart, and he achieved everything he was going out for, and I find that unique for a superhero movie.
Yeah, exactly, and that honestly, that's the reason that Infinity War probably, happened the way it did, because of the events in Civil War due to Baron Zemo, so... hat off to him, very underrated. At number 5, without this movie, we wouldn't have the MCU. Iron Man. It definitely has the cookie cutter villain at the end. It definitely has some cheesy moments. You can tell that Robert Downey Jr. is great as a whole, but you can tell that the world building, they weren't confident in it. But overall, without Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, we wouldn't have this. And I'm not the type of person that says that makes this movie, that makes it a great movie, but it has everything there that you need for a first. And it is so much fun. It's rewatchable. Soundtrack's great with the AC/DC. see you have the cockiness, you have the dynamic between him and Pepper Potts, him and Happy Hogan. You just have and him and Terrence Howard, which another guy who's got kicked out of the MCU. Apparently they have a tendency to do that a lot. So I think that the first Iron Man is really good, and I'd even say it's great, but it definitely has, it's very thin as far as overall scope because you can tell that they weren't confident there, but it's still a great movie, and I'm not mad at it being number 5. What about you?
Yeah, I understand it. It's an important movie. It set up everything there. If this movie was not successful, then we wouldn't have anything else. And it validates the total end credit scene, which is the most important end credit scene because it showed us everything that was going to move forward. But yeah, it is. Does this feel a little slighter now because we've just seen how much farther that this universe can grow and how much more they can do? But I think for what it needed to be, it was very successful, and I think it started fairly grounded. Having it be through him being kept as a war prisoner and build his own gear. It was really smart for them not to start off in space and to start with a hero that kind of makes sense and seems like it could be reality. Yeah,
definitely. So at number 4, we have Thor Ragnarok. I love this movie. It's hilarious. People say like, oh, it's not Ragnarok, or oh, it's too Taika Waititi. It's not really an MCU movie. It's just a Taika Waititi movie or whatever. But who cares? It's a fun movie. It's action. The stakes are still there at the end, and it shows like it's the very first scene in Infinity War because of this. Like it earned that right to have that, and it's not just for story reasons. It earned it based on this story because it's the irony that he had to cause his own Ragnarok, and the Hela character, Cate Blanchett, she knew what movie it was in. She was having a lot of fun. Thor and Loki once again kicking ass, taking names. You got characters like Korg, voiced by the Taika Waititis, and I just think it's just so much fun. The action's great, the soundtrack's great, it's beautiful, and I think it has a lot of heart to it as well. I mean, it's just so much fun. What about you with Thor Ragnarok?
Yeah, I put this alongside the Guardians movies as the most rewatchable, the one I'm definitely most likely to revisit because it is just so fun and just able to put accessible for any situation, whether I'm kind of doing work and not fully paying attention or whether be invested, enjoy a laugh. I just feel like the humor of it will never age poorly, and it's the best use of Chris Hemsworth in the movie. What he was able to do with Thor. It was just a perfect connection with Taika Waititi.
And I haven't even touched on Thor. It's the best Thor. I haven't even touched on Hulk yet. It's the best Hulk we have ever seen in anything. He just does a great job. Yeah. It's just so much fun. You got Hulk as a kid. He's talking. No, puny Hulk, puny Thor, all that type of stuff. There's just so many lines. It's so quotable. It's so much fun, and it's not just a fun movie though. There are stakes to it. You have the relationship with him and Loki. You have Odin and everything that happens to him. The backstabbing. You have Valkyrie, another great character that we haven't even talked about. Totally forgot about her because there's just so much going on in this movie. But it's all balanced greatly. Like honestly, you would think this is Thor Civil War because of how much characters in here. Thor Infinity War of how much characters. There's just so much going on. So much fun. Taika Waititi did a great job, and that's the reason that with all the James Gunn stuff going on, he's the first name people think of to take over Guardians because he just did a great job. They think that he can handle the action, the scope, the characters, everything. So, testament to that. It's great.
And just the interstellar kind of world building too that he just did such a good job. That's very important to Guardians. So
exactly.
Also Jeff Goldblum's in it, so it has to be in the
again.
top 5.
There's so much. It's just great. All right, and we're at the top 3 of MCU movies. This is either going to be completely no surprise to you at all. Well, probably a surprise because a lot of people would have Avengers and Iron Man in their top 3, Civil War. So there's definitely going to be some surprise, but it's one of those where, honestly, the top 5, top 7, really, of this franchise, it could interchange for anybody and you wouldn't even be mad. So at number 3, this one breaks my heart because this is the one that I think is the most overrated movie in the MCU, and that is Captain America Winter Soldier. I think that people just look at it as, as they say, it's an espionage film, it's a spy thriller, blah, 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 blah. And don't get me wrong, Captain America is my favorite character in the MCU aside from Spider-Man, who's my favorite character of all superheroes. So and Thor's now really creeping up. So he's top 3, let's put it that way. So Captain America's top 3, I think he does great. It is a Captain America movie. It's a lot of fun. The action's great. Winter Soldier is a badass. You got Robert Redford doing a good job. You got Sam Jackson. You got Scarlett Johansson. You get the introduction of Falcon. So you have a lot of stuff that goes on. But when it comes, people just ignore the plot stuff. There's so many conveniences. It seems kind of lazy. When I hear things like, oh, they honest trailer proof this movie, and I don't buy that. And I just think that just really upsets me. And honestly, I don't think maybe I wouldn't hate this movie as much. Hate, I say hate because it's an MCU movie. I still overall enjoy it and like parts of it, but I think it upsets me most because of how much love they get. They think it's like, oh, just it's a spy thriller, it's not a comic book movie, it's just a movie with comic book characters, and it's just so great, and that's what change it. But whatever. I don't know. It affects me, and I know I'm the only one in the world who thinks that. Even people that don't think it as highly, they don't think it as low as I do. But that's fair. I don't think anyone's wrong for loving this movie or thinking it's one of the best, if not the best. But you, Captain America: Winter Soldier, thoughts?
I feel personally offended in that you hate me because it's my number one, and I want to see statistics because I feel that this might be our number one if it wasn't for you, who I'm sure put it at like 19.
No, but I will say I had it. I think I had it at 17 or 16, and Jake, I think he had it at like 11. So that definitely brought it down a couple.
I mean the grounded genre, like political thriller of it, does help aid it, and I think did kind of set up where future movies were able to kind of really pinpoint different genres and find their own identity, like Spider-Man being a high school teen, or Thor Ragnarok going super just straight up comedy, intergalactic comedy. And it just shows that you did need to stick to all of the superhero tropes always. But I think the main reason it's so successful is that the action scenes are just so kinetic and so exciting. It's the one that you can like feel the punches more than the other movies. I think it's because there's just not as many powers being involved in it. It's more real. And Samuel L. Jackson is my favorite performance in all Marvel Universe. I wish we had more Nick Fury, and he gets his time to shine. And that's when I was debating what my favorite action scene. My other one would be the car chase with Nick Fury, leading him kind of disappearing before getting attacked by the Winter Soldier. I think it's just a beautifully setup piece. So Winter Soldier is my number one. It's not quite as rewatchable as some of the comedic ones, but I think it is just the most effective action movie.
Number 2. There's only 2 movies left, so most people are going to assume what our number 1 is going to be, and let's go ahead and talk about our number 2, which is going to be The Avengers Infinity War. That's a huge shock for me that it missed out. Literally, if you look at our rating system, it lost by 1 point. They would have tied at the bare minimum, and then I don't know exactly how I would have chosen. I probably would have been biased, and I would have picked Infinity War because I know for a fact that it is my number 1 MCU movie. So Infinity War, it's great. It's so much fun. You have all these characters. I understand the backlash. People say like, oh, there's too much. It feels like a middle movie. Blah 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 blah. You know that the stakes aren't really that there after the snap. All that type of stuff. But if you look at it as a standalone movie, which other than the fact that you need all the movies before to understand the characters, as one solo movie, if you look at it as one solo movie, it has a great story, it has great structure, it has great action, it has great character development, even within the movie, and not even counting the stuff before it. So I think Avengers Infinity War is really great, and I really am, kind of sad when people, kind of look to pick flaws at it, so that upsets me, because if you have genuine flaws, I think it's fine. But I think the difference, like with me and Winter Soldier, I genuinely am begging people to make me understand those flaws, whereas this one, it's like I'm telling them and they're like, it doesn't matter, it's just a second movie, there's no stake, blah blah blah, and they're just avoiding it. So Infinity War, I know you're not as high on it, but what are your thoughts?
I think I had it around 5 or 6.
Yeah, that's why I said not as high. Like it's not.
And I think it's just I'm wondering if there's a little recency bias to having this high, and years down the road if it's still up there, because I think why I don't have it in my top 3 is just because it's not a standalone movie. It's the only one that you have. If you I've watched it with people who hasn't seen all the movies, and if you don't have an attachment to these characters,
here's how I look at it. It's literally a franchise. Like, are you going to go into Terminator 2 and understand what the dynamic of John Connor and Sarah Connor with the Terminator without the first one? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why I think that's not a fair, criticism.
I think it is, because then you still have later movies like Black Panther is later in the franchise and still able to stand on its own and not be required. But
overall, it doesn't have the weight. It definitely.
I don't think this is why it's not a bad movie. I think this is just why I don't think it is as important as some of these other movies in the thing. Why have Guardians or Winter Soldier ahead of it? Right. Just because we love it so much as a end piece to everything else. I think that adds an unfair emotional attachment to it, rather than what the movie was able to do. A lot of why we like the movie is because we are so attached to the world. I do think its strength is Thanos, and that was also the biggest risk, because they have hyped him up since was it Avengers or before that? When you get your first
I think you got the first sight of him with Guardians, but they hinted at him kind of in Avengers. Like, that's the point.
Yeah, because he helped out Loki.
Yeah, they officially saw him in Guardians.
Okay, they've been hyping him up so long as the big monster for this thing, and if it didn't come out with a lot of impact, then it would make everything kind of have a bad taste before it. But he has so much intimidation and presence on the screen, and such a motivation that is understandable. And you, in a way, you kind of care for him, and I feel like some people might reach in their dark side and actually root for him in a weird spot of their soul.
Yeah.
But I think that's just how well developed that character is, and well developed I think the performance by Josh Brolin is.
I'm going to snap, and we're going to talk about number one. As you guys, process of elimination. I don't know if this is the testament and it shows of who's within our group. We have a bunch of silly people and a bunch of fun stuff, but it's the very first Guardians of the Galaxy. It's space epic. It's hilarious. It's fun. It has emotional weight to it. The first 10 minutes of this movie, honestly, battles the first 5-10 minutes of how emotional it is with Peter Quill and his mother. Like, it's emotional. Take my hand, Peter, and he doesn't, all that stuff. So it just builds up why music is so important to this character, this franchise of Guardians, and why it's honestly got dragged into Avengers Infinity War, and why it's so important, why he's so nostalgic for the 80s, because that's when he came into, that's when he left Earth, and just honestly why the weight of, for example, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was so important because of what was built and the foundation of the characters of this movie. And you have characters like Drax, Gamora, you have Drax, you have Groot and Rocket, which are 2 CG characters. You have a tree and a raccoon who are just so much fun. And, you believe everything in this world, and clearly nothing in this world is real, but you believe that it actually could happen because of how well it's written, how well it's acted, and how well it looks.
And I feel like there's a testament to this great character development by James Gunn and by the actors, is that everyone has a different favorite character. There's no one that really
hardly
you just don't care for. Yeah,
you do a survey. You ask 100 people. It's going to be almost like a 20-20 split, pretty much. Like it's like across the board, spread out.
Yeah, because they all have their own quirks and their own sense of humor and their own motivations, and even, like, Gamora is the least funny, but she's the most kick-ass. And some people just like to watch this woman kick some ass.
Exactly.
And be threatening.
Groot says 3 words. I am Groot. And he's hilarious and lovable.
My mom just loves Baby Groot so much. So my mom, who isn't even a Marvel fan, but sees certain things, loves Guardians, because I think there's just something for everyone to grab onto. And I feel like this franchise was made for me, because I am much more comedic leaning. Yeah. Quirkier, and the 70s music they played was on like mix CDs that my dad had, and me and my brother would steal them from him and listen to them late at night. So even though I didn't grow up in the 70s, these songs still have like a nostalgic kick to me. But outside of the nostalgia, they're just used so effectively within the action scenes, and also have an emotional impact too, that you understand what these songs mean to him. So outside of the fun, they also have some depth and add to the complexity of these characters.
Exactly, and that just shows overall, well, I say for the most part, but pretty much overall what the MCU brings to the table. You have characters that, that's another thing with the MCU. You ask someone who their favorite character is in the MCU, you're not going to get most of the same answers. You might not even get a lot of the main characters. You're going to get side characters. You're going to ask them what's their favorite movie. For the most part, like I said, even if it's just, amongst the same 7 movies, there's still going to be a lot of different number ones. So our number one, based on this, is Guardians of the Galaxy, but to be honest, if you look at our list, it's probably Guardians was at number 2 for most of us, and then the number 1 kept switching. So Guardians 1 got bumped up from 2 to 1, based on math. So that could be one of those situations where, it's just a testament of how great the MCU is and how smart it is and how is patient, in which, I don't want to knock DC or even bring DC into it, but just to compare of how good the MCU has done. Is if you take your time, you build up these characters, you have patience, you have confidence in what your plan is. Kevin Feige's done a great job of the MCU, and even if you're not a superhero geek, you're gonna at least like 5 of these 20 movies, and that just shows how well that this franchise of the MCU and this cinematic universe has been built up. And when you got people thriving to have the Netflix people coming into this series because of how great they've done, that just shows that all of it is great and it's very enjoyable.
Yeah, MCU has changed the industry more than anything in the past 20 years, and it's interesting to see where they go the next few years in the next couple phases.
Yeah,
so I'm looking forward to it.
It's kind of scary. People might not be thinking this now, but maybe 50 years from now, if people go back and look, obviously there's a big movie gap, but if you think of as a whole, bigger impact on pop culture and movies as a whole, Star Wars and the MCU, like that, it's going to be a debate in the future of like what's more important. And obviously there's a couple movie difference, but as far as what's happened, I think that's something that people, if not already thinking now, or at least whispering now, it's definitely going to be brought up in the future. And that just shows that the MCU it's a fun time. Oh yeah, MCU. It's one of those franchises that, like I said, it's gonna have a lot of different lists. So hey, let us know in the comments below what your top 20 is. What's your number one? Is it different from ours? Are we crazy for having Guardians at number 1? Are we crazy for having the Avengers as low as number 8? So many questions you could be asking. Let us know in the comments below how crazy we are, and please subscribe to the channel, because this is, like I said, this is an ongoing series that we're gonna be doing with ranked. We're going to rank franchises, directors, actors, all that type of stuff. This is the very first real episode showing our personalities and getting the process started of Confidential Cinema. I am Henry Confidential, that is Zach Ford, and this is Confidential Cinema. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's see you next time.